In our last episode, we talked about building a bridge from the entrance to the altar. More specifically, we're talking about having a system in place that offers a seamless process for taking a brand new family from the entrance of your church parking lot to the sanctuary altar, where we hope that they would surrender their life to Christ. The key word today that we're really focused on, though, is seamless. Last week we talked about each part of that process, but today we really want to drill down the importance of passing the baton, right? Without missing the handoff. This is crucial for maximum impact. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Welcome to the Small Town Big Church Leadership Podcast, a place where pastors, church leaders, and volunteers can grow themselves and the local church. We're pastors Brad and Misty Hilton, church planters in rural America.
You know, you've heard it said before, I'm sure. You never get a second chance to what, Brad?
Make a first impression.
That's right. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And it's really true. It's true when you're interviewing for a job. It's true when your child is sitting in the big chair at the dentist office. And it's true for every family who's attending your church for the very first time. You know, you've probably heard us use this example before, but it's not true that you can just drive through a town that you've never been and have a really good idea whether a Mexican restaurant is going to be amazing or not. Now, our kids used to play a lot of ball, and we tore up the state of Oklahoma watching those kids play. And honestly, we could usually tell just by driving by.
Yeah, if Los Mariachi was a winner Mexican dinner, right?
Well, we knew whether or not we were even going to take a chance,
Right.
right? I mean, we looked at things like, how presentable is the outside of the building? Are there cars in the parking lot?
Is there trash in the yard? Is the yard mowed? What about when you get out of the car at the restaurant? You walk in, does anyone greet you? You know, how quick do they greet you?
Or do you stand there awkwardly wondering,
exactly.
do you see yourself?
And I don't see anybody.
Do you not?
You know, what do I do?
Right?
You know, how long do you have to wait? How long does it take for the waiter or the waitress to bring you your water con limon, right? That you can tell we do this a lot. We are pros at Mexican restaurants. The system has to be seamless and a pleasing process from the moment we pull into the parking lot to the moment that they place the peppermint on top of our ticket at the very, very end. The question we have to ask ourselves is our system a seamless and a pleasing process?
Exactly.
You know, this starts with every single person in every position performing at their very, very best according to the mission and the win for the team that they're serving on.
Right.
And it's ultimately about putting yourself in the shoes of each first-time family and discerning their overall experience of the process. If most families decide whether or not they're going to return within the first 7 minutes, then every minute really matters. You not only want them to come back, you want them to come to Christ. So we like to give the example of a relay race. You know, think about it. Every single step, and I don't know if you ran track. I ran track. I hated it. But this is true. Every single step you take as a runner will be your contribution and the determining factor as to whether or not your team wins the race.
Yes,
Every single step matters. Every stride matters. The way in which we swing our arms, it matters. And finally, the handoff
that's what I was
is
going to
really
say.
what matters most. Every second.
And when you think about the handoff, you would be looking ahead. When you are in a relay, you're not running with your head down. You're literally looking ahead with your head up. You are anticipating,
evaluating,
handing off that baton
That's right.
to the next person. You do not want to drop the baton.
Right.
Like, that would be the worst thing that could happen in a relay race. And thus, in the church realm,
it's no different.
It's no different. You know, if we've got new families coming through our doors every single week, and we do here at Mountain Movers, then all volunteers, every single person on that day has to be thinking about, you know, can I anticipate their needs? You know, as a first-time person, they don't know where to park. They don't know where to go in the doors.
Exactly.
They don't know what to do with their kids yet. They don't know where the bathroom is, the coffee shop is. We need to anticipate that, be ahead of it, and we are the ones then passing them off from one zone to a next.
Putting ourselves in the shoes of that first-time
Yes.
family, thinking about how are they interpreting all of this? How is this impacting them? And really looking through their eyes and asking yourself, okay, is the machine working the way that it was designed to
Yes.
work? And what's my part in all of this? How can we make this process as smooth
Yeah.
and as pleasing as possible?
As a volunteer, there's 3 things that we would encourage you to do before serving the house. All right. So any given week that you're scheduled, maybe it's a Sunday, maybe it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday for a midweek, or maybe it's a big event. But these 3 things would apply every single time you're serving. All right. The first thing is this: prepare your heart.
It's so huge.
Here's what I'm talking about. Prepare your heart. You know, when you are scheduled to serve, I'm just going to tell you, it's going to be that day. It's going to be that Sunday morning that for whatever reason, you start feeling very irritable with your family. You're wondering why on that day your kids can't just get it together. Why do they need to fight on a Sunday morning? Why does your spouse have to just annoy you on a Sunday morning? Why is it that the baby just spit up all over your beautiful outfit right before you walked out the door? Well, let me tell you why. Because there is a real enemy who does not want you to be on your A game. There is an enemy who does not want us to add one more soul to the kingdom, who doesn't want us to be focused on what's most important, who doesn't want you, number one, to serve. But if he can't stop you from serving, he's definitely going to distract you. And so when we say prepare your heart, here's really what I focus on. You know, a lot of times on Sunday, Brad, we kind of think, well, we're going to church. So I feel like a lot of people, the normal routine of spending time in God's presence, we set that aside because we're going to church.
Yeah, we're going.
Oh, it's like, hey, we're going to hear the word. We're going to experience worship. We're going to pray. Why do I need to do that before I come?
Right.
But the very reason is because you need to prepare your heart. You as a volunteer, you need to keep that same rhythm that you have going during the week. You need to make sure, and maybe it doesn't need to be as long. Maybe you normally spend 30 minutes. Maybe you only need to spend 15. But can you set your alarm 15 minutes earlier and get up, kick on some worship in your home, read a passage of scripture, pray for a few minutes, and get your head focused on what we are doing today, preparing your heart to serve.
It reminds me a lot of what we say at Mountain Movers, and that is that we don't just go to church, but we are the church.
That's right.
And we are a spiritual force, an entity, the hope of the world that Satan must reckon with. It's the power of God flowing through us to do the work that God has called us to do, to make a difference in other people's lives. So it's not about just going to a place. It's about making God's presence your priority as you prepare your heart to go to the place of worship to make a difference according to the purpose that God has placed inside of you as a volunteer or as a leader.
And, you know, I think about even teams. I played sports all growing up. And, you know, prior to a game.
Yeah, that's a good example.
When we would travel, especially when we traveled, we were expected to be quiet and get our head on straight.
Yeah.
What are you about to do? What is the position you are playing? What is it that you are going to contribute to the team? What is it that has been bothering you this week? You know, as an athlete, you may have had family problems that week. Maybe you've had financial problems. Maybe you've had health problems. Whatever those things are, you have to prepare your mind for what's about to happen. And that is, okay, right now, I need to set those things aside for what I'm about to do. That's all part of preparing our heart. It's not just about rolling in and volunteering your time. Every position, every volunteer, all of it matters. And so we want to prepare our hearts. The second thing that we want to do is plan to arrive early.
Yeah.
And this is huge.
I like the word plan because that's really what it's all about.
It really is.
Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we should plan to be early so that we can be on time.
And think about it, Brad. Anytime you plan to just get somewhere at the exact time that you're supposed to, right? Whether it's a doctor's appointment, your kid's going to school, right? Your job, heaven forbid. If you plan on getting there right at 8 a.m., because that's when school starts, you inevitably are running out the door, grabbing backpacks, grabbing lunch boxes, screaming at the kids. You get to the car, something's not working right. We throw everything in. We fly to the school, right? Only to realize that our heart is racing. We're irritated with one another. And now someone's late.
It sounds like my entire childhood all the way up to graduating as a senior in high school.
I know.
It wasn't until I went to college and began to mature. And I thought to myself one day, I just thought, I don't like this.
Why am I doing this?
I don't like doing this to myself.
Right?
And I want things to change. And that's when things begin to change.
And I want to just, again, remind you that there's an enemy. There's a real enemy who is constantly working against us because he doesn't want you to be calm. He doesn't want you to be ready to serve. Rather, he wants you to be stressed out, irritable, frustrated. And think about it, Brad, when you're running behind, even if you're not blaming other people, you're blaming yourself, it comes off as you're stressed out, you're irritable, you're frustrated. And now let's think about how does that affect all of those people coming in. So we want to make sure that we plan to arrive early.
But you also don't want to miss the huddle or be late to the huddle because you're going to miss something vitally important. The tips,
the celebration
of what God's doing in your team and in your zone. So don't be late for huddle. Be early so you can be on time.
Finally, the third thing we want to encourage you as a volunteer to do is focus on the why. And this ultimately has to be the driving force in our mind as we serve, because we can prepare our heart, we can arrive early, but if while we're serving, we are not reminded that any one of the people walking past us, this could be their very first day. Today could really mean the difference of them making heaven or hell their home. I mean, even now, like that brings me to tears to think about that. It doesn't matter where you're serving. If you're opening a door, you smile. You don't realize that week someone could have contemplated suicide. That week, someone's marriage could have fallen apart. That week, someone could have lost a loved one, and just your smile or your wave in the parking lot or just your kind words as you take their kids into the zone. And even for those who are members of your church, that we need the body of Christ.
That's right.
I mean, some weeks you're going to be so down and the enemy's going to try to convince you don't go to church, right? And then that day you show up and someone gives you a hug or they smile or they love on you or they pray for you. That's what it's all about. We are the church.
And keep in mind, every single part of the process, every person that a first-time family comes into contact with, those are all like pieces that are fit together.
Right.
And you talked about...
Like a puzzle.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah.
You talk about just holding a door. You might think, man, I'm just holding a door.
All I'm doing
is just, but we tell ourselves that's all I'm doing. And
it's not that big of a deal.
It's really not that big of a deal, but it is because the whole overall experience, especially in that first 7 minutes as we build a bridge from the entrance to the altar, it's micro experiences.
Yeah. I want you to even think about
all put together, making one overall
beautiful handoff.
Beautiful handoff.
Yeah.
And just realizing, man, as a family, that was a really enjoyable experience when we visited that church and we were attending that church for the first time. And it's not just because you were holding the door with a smile, it's because everybody was working in sync.
Yes, from the zone
entrance
to the next.
To the altar, from one zone to the next.
I want you to even just think about, as we're wrapping up today, you think often that a door greeter, it's just not that big of a deal. Anybody can do it. It's not that tough of a job. And that is just so not the truth. I want you to think about, Brad, if somebody was holding the door and they just opened the door, propped their foot up against it, and was just leaning against the door, right?
Talking on the phone.
On their cell phone.
Or had a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee. They're sipping on it as people are walking through. You are holding a door.
Yeah.
In theory, you are holding a door. You're a door greeter.
That's just fulfilling a task.
Exactly. You think about the difference. What we talk about here is we want to roll out the red carpet.
We're a family of unconditional love and honor.
When I open the door, I want to open it.
I'm showing honor. I'm showing love.
To
I'm showing value.
That person walking through it, to smile. I want you to think about, if the President of the United States were to show up at your church that day.
That's right.
How would you show value? Yeah. Everybody would be on point.
Would you be on the phone?
If Jesus himself
have a drink in your
were
hand?
to walk through our doors.
Yeah.
Like, would we want to be caught on our phone or drinking our coffee?
Would you hold the door with your foot? No,
No.
these are all value moves. So it's all about the
Exactly.
experience of showing people that are walking through the doors, I'm fully focused on you because
Yes.
you matter more than anything else. And they do,
Yep.
because this is a soul that behind that soul is an eternity.
Yep.
And there's going to be a decision made that day. And we want to make sure we do our part in whatever
Yes.
position we're serving in to help them make that decision for Christ at the altar. It's what it's all
So
about.
let's recap. 3 things. If you're going to pass the baton and you're not going to miss that handoff, you need to prepare your heart, prepare to arrive early, and focus on the why.
Well, if you found value in today's content, and we really hope that you did, we would encourage you to like it and share it so that others can be encouraged as well. Also, if you'll subscribe, that way you will never miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.